This is how to make bread. To make bread, we're going to need some basic equipment. We'll need 2 large bowls, a heavy pot with a lid that can go in the oven. Should be about 5 quarts or so. That's a little more than a gallon. And we'll need some parchment paper. In addition to that, we're going to need some basic measuring tools and ingredients, of course. So we're going to start with one of our large bowls. And in that, we're going to put 3 cups of flour. And make sure that you've leveled out your measuring cup to make sure you're getting exactly 3 cups of flour. In that, we will add a 1/4 teaspoon of yeast and just kind of sprinkle it on there. And then we will add a whole teaspoon of salt. Now, I'm not a big salt fan, but bread without salt does not taste very good. So then you're going to take that, you're going to mix it with a wooden spoon or wooden spatula and just get it all mixed in. To that, we're going to add 1 1/2 cups of hot tap water. It should be pretty hot, like almost too hot to wash your hands, but not too hot to touch. So, pretty hot water, definitely not boiling. It should be hot from the tap. And then you just pour that in to this. This is going to be quite an easy recipe. And then we stir this around until all the flour is moistened. It'll make what's called a shaggy dough. We just kind of mix that around. Scrape it off the spatula, put that in there, and then just let that be. Believe it or not, that's the main part of it. And we're going to let that be, and we're going to cover that with plastic wrap. Just put a layer of plastic wrap across the top, and then let it sit for 3 hours in a not too hot place, but not too cold place. Just kind of on the counter is fine. Okay, so it's been 3 hours, and what we're going to do is we're going to put our heavy pot with the lid. I'm using a 5-quart Dutch oven, but you can use a really heavy pot as long as it has a lid. And we're going to put that into a cold oven on the middle rack. And there's nothing in the oven, and then we're going to set it to 450 degrees and let it start preheating. And then we're going to take care of our dough. This is what our dough looks like after it's rested for 3 hours. And we've got the pot in the oven heating to 450 degrees. And so I'm going to take this plastic wrap off. I'm just going to put it aside and keep it because we're going to need it in just a little bit. And you'll notice the dough looks really wet and kind of bubbly on top. And I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of flour. Don't forget to include that in your ingredient list that we need a little extra flour on top. And then I'm going to take my fingers and go around the outside. I'm not sticking my fingers through the dough. And I go around the dough like this, scraping it off the bottom, getting some of that loose flour down underneath it. And then when I need more flour, I'm going to sprinkle a little bit more on there. Notice I'm going pretty heavy on this. And so I keep going around like this. And eventually I can flip it over and fold it over, flip it over, flip it over, until it starts feeling like it's kind of coming together. Keep doing that. And if I need to add flour, if it's getting a little sticky, I can add some flour. But I fold it over and push it together. And this is a little bit more flour on here because it's starting to get a little sticky. Push it down, fold it over. The dough is really soft, but But I keep doing that. And I've done that about 10 to 15 times. And then I take a bowl with a piece of parchment paper on it, and then I just take my dough, plop it right in the middle there, very unceremoniously, plop it on there, and then I put my plastic wrap back on this, and I set a timer for 35 minutes. I just set that aside on my counter, and 35 minutes, we come back to it and we'll put it in the oven. Okay, so your oven has been preheating with your Heavy Potter Dutch oven in it at 450 degrees for 35 minutes. And then your dough has been rising for 35 minutes also. So with pot holders, because this is going to be screaming hot, you're going to take your Dutch oven out of the oven. Close the oven door, and then take the lid off of your Dutch oven. Take the plastic wrap and throw that away. And then take your bread dough, which has risen just a little bit, and grab it really carefully so as not to spill it. Grab only the paper and drop that in there, making sure not to touch the pot, because that pot is 450 degrees. And then put the lid on there. Don't worry about if the paper gets caught in the lid. And then put that back in the oven for 30 minutes. There you go. Okay, so now it has been 30 minutes in the oven. We've got one more baking to do. We're going to take this out with our oven mitts because it's really hot. And this is probably the most dangerous portion of what we're doing. We're going to take the lid off, put that aside. We don't need it. And you may be able to tell our bread isn't quite cooked all the way. We're going to take the bread out using the paper. And then we're going to take the paper off. And this is what our bread looks like. It's not quite done. It's going to go in there for about 10 to 15 more minutes. So I plop it in the oven, in the pot, without the paper, without the lid, and it's going to go back in, still at 450 degrees, in the oven for 10 to 15 minutes until it's golden brown. Okay, it's time to take this out of the oven now. Again, using our oven mitts, and we turn off the oven, take the bread out of the oven, and then using one pot holder, I kind of turn the pot upside down so I can get the bread out, and then put the bread on someplace so it's lifted up off of the table. And you get this beautiful loaf of bread. Now, I know you're going to probably be tempted to eat it immediately, but wait at least 15 minutes before you slice into it. And then you can have it. And I found that it's great the day you have it or the next day. If you have it the third day, you might want to toast it after you slice it, because it is a natural bread. There you saw there's no preservatives or anything in there. There's just flour, yeast, salt, and water. So it's not going to keep as long as a commercial bread that has 10,000 chemicals in it. Hope you enjoy it. Have a good day.